Hey, great. Really excited to be here. I'm equally excited for the panel. Really cool to see downstairs how we're still building, which is just awesome. And I think it's thrilling for all of us to be here. So, real quickly, views are our own. Just want to have a quick disclaimer. Although we're on behalf of a lot of these companies, all individual views, want to give each of these panelists a quick ability to introduce themselves. So why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Sarah Richard. I'm one of the counsels over at Blockdaemon. We are a blockchain infrastructure company. So we have everything from staking nodes, MPC wallets, and some APIs as well. So looking forward to chatting with you guys.
Awesome. Nice to meet you. I'm Katrina Paglia, the General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer for Pantera Capital. We're a crypto venture capital firm that invests globally. We've got about $4.5 billion under management, and I think familiar with a lot of the folks in this building today. Prior to Pantera, I was product counsel at Coinbase with Sumeet and ran the legal team that was responsible for the exchange and the assets that we listed. And then prior to that, I was not in crypto at all, and I had a very TradFi background, and then kind of pivoted into Coinbase and really haven't left the space. So excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Yasamin Parsafar. I am actually not an in-house counsel. I'm an intellectual property attorney at a law firm, and I co-lead our firm's blockchain team. And that's the law firm Shepherd Mullen. And my practice is split between litigation related to IP, so trademark, copyrights, patents, false advertising, as well as advice and counseling. And I advise a lot of companies on Web3 related products and services. Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Julie Krosnicki. I work at Reddit. It is a platform that supports online communities of communities. I lead all of the counseling for our blockchain products. So if you've heard of collectible avatars, our Reddit Vault, we also have community points. Those are some of the products, partnerships, everything in that area, IP, regulatory, it's all under me.
Hey everyone, Nguyen Vu. I'm AGC at Bolt Financial. We do online payments and checkout for merchants. Prior to Bolt, I was at Facebook Meta, working on a lot of their metaverse payment issues. Prior to Facebook, spent some time at Apple, more traditional consumer finance, and part of that, just a boring old law firm in DC, no offense.
Yeah, and Sumeet Chugani at Coinbase also have a TradFi background and was formerly a litigator, which is coming to fruition again. So yeah, just want to note, this is called Disruptors. We're talking about digital assets, AI, wallet tech. We call it Disruptors because this group is creating with their clients, a lot of the most unique, cutting-edge products that are disrupting industries, right? Whether it's a traditional wallet, whether it's traditional art, or whether it's traditional finance. So let's hop right in, and I'm going to start with you, Katrina, as someone that's seeing a portfolio of different companies, especially in the digital asset space and now the NFT space as well. What has been a shift in the last few months or even year that you've seen of how people are looking at both risk management and how you, from a VC standpoint, are looking at companies through the journeys that they're going through?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word of the day is regulatory. We consistently, we poll our VCs and our platform, and we want to make sure we understand what their needs are and whether we're trying to win a deal or keep them kind of moving forward once they're in the ecosystem with Pantera. We say, what do you want? What are you looking for? And the surveys have shifted so much more towards regulatory help, transparency, guidance, resources. So I think we actually hosted our annual summit last week, and I think the word regulatory came up about 200 times on every panel for the entire day. So I mean, it's tricky. There's not clarity in the U.S. unfortunately right now. So the best we can do, and kind of what we do with our portfolio companies, is how we test is clearly kind of the baseline for everything. People want to know there's a ton of legal issues, but obviously, are you a security, are you not a security is kind of the big one. So we think about that. We do a lot of scrolling the SEC enforcement actions that have come out recently, because with kind of each one of these things that they put out there, you glean a little bit more information about how they are thinking about applying the Howey test, right? So they talk about the facts that they think led to X, Y, and Z being a security in each one of these complaints. So until we actually get the clarity that the industry desperately needs and wants, we're kind of relying on that for now. I think once it does come, this was a quote that actually Emily from Coinbase said last week, and we tweeted it so I can repeat it. Once the regulatory clarity comes, the floodgates will open. And I think everybody agrees. I think we all want it, we're ready to do it, we just don't know what to do right now. So hopefully we kind of get in pace with the rest of the world in that regard. But yeah, so that's kind of top of mind for now.
Yeah, so Sarah, over to you on that. When you're thinking about regulatory clarity as well as balancing some of the customer interests and customer needs now, talk about some of the wallet offerings that you guys are coming out with at Blockdaemon, as well as how you're balancing those two needs, and of course, how you need to build for the future and what regulation may come into play.
Yeah, I mean, I think wallet tech in general is something that you really see a lot of the issues with, like regulations versus industry kind of at the point of them creating products and them, not being on really equal playing fields. As you're saying, like regulation is so important right now, and that's one thing that I want to like scream from the rooftops. Granted, I'm also slightly biased. My background is as regulatory tech attorney. But that being said, I feel like wallets and self-custody right now are really the future of this industry, right? Like you go to Capitol Hill, you talk to any lawmaker, and their issue isn't I hate crypto. It's one, I don't really understand crypto, but also I'm concerned about the consumer protection aspect of it. Like you have so many members of Congress that don't really know much about the industry, but they do have their constituents on the phone calling saying, hey, my money was taken by insert company that has collapsed here. I'm worried about my money because rug pull here, right? That's what they hear. So it's not they don't support this space. It's that they have very legitimate concerns because there are some companies that have wronged their constituents. And so that's why rules for the space are so important. And I think that's really going to be an ongoing struggle with like building, sound rules for the space. Rules in the space creates a lot of positive development, investment. You have that structure. You have, a very fast acceleration of this industry, but not having that framework that's good rules, not just any rules, good rules, really is going to be a problem. So like you see, right now, the SEC put out an NPRM, so a notice of proposed rulemaking on custody, right? Something that obviously would impact wallet space. The SEC is coming at it from a very traditional finance background because that's what they're used to regulating, right? Understandable. For them, custody is control, okay? So you, big bank, you have the gold bricks in your basement, right? That you have control over gold bricks for the individuals who own them, right? You as third-party custodian. And there needs to be rules on that to be a qualified custodian, et cetera. Then you transfer to the crypto space where you have something like MPC wallet tech, right? Where, us, as Blockdaemon would be offering the wallet tech, right? We don't custody it because we don't have control over it. So when you're talking about, custody rules, we don't see ourselves as a custodian because you, wallet holder, you custody it. But when you then look at, you have for an MPC wallet, say, 3 different shards of your same key, how do you rectify that with SEC rules when they're used to thinking, oh, physical asset, you have one piece of it, how does that kind of fit into the picture? So it's going to be a lot of education and working with them, and that's why I feel like an SRO type situation where you can go back and forth with government to really educate them while moving the industry forward is going to be the future. But yes, self-custody is going to be huge.
No, all well said. And Nguyen, I'm going to go over to you just based on the payments and the wallet space that Bolt plays in.
Sure.
You are regulated, right? You have money transmitter licenses, FinCEN, but now you're playing in a space that has some of these gray areas that you have to play in. What are some of the ways that you're dealing with that with your clients?
Yeah, so I'm the third lawyer to speak. We've brought up securities law, which is a very robust area of law. We brought up consumer protection law, again, very robust. I'm going to rank another area, and that's anti-money laundering. And I think that, and under the Bank Secrecy Act, and despite the name Bank Secrecy Act, it applies to much more than just banks. Applies to a term called money services businesses, which is defined very broadly, and and can impact you, even if you certainly don't think you're a bank, but you certainly don't think you're a financial institution. And so you have to think about that. And so the goal of that, and Sumeet mentioned FinCEN. So FinCEN is the arm of the Department of Treasury that's really tasked with making sure that transactions in the U.S. don't fund illicit activity. And so there are a lot of obligations put on these MSBs, money services business, to KYC, right? Know your customer, know who you're dealing with, to monitor the transactions. And if you, as the MSB, detect something suspicious in these transactions, you have to actually file what's called a suspicious activity report with the government, which is then used by a variety of law enforcement agencies as they do their investigations. So first, you have to figure out, would any of this apply to me? Am I a money services business in my activity? And the short answer is, and I think the most good legal answers is, it depends, right? And so it's incredibly nuanced, and to the point I think the other...
Your clients love that, right?
Yeah, and to the point the other speakers made, it's unclear at this point. And so what I advise, even if we can make that argument that we're not an MSB, we're not transmitting money or a substitute of currency, we should take some measures to know that we're not dealing with the bad guys, right? Or we're not enabling bad guys to do more bad things. And so that might not mean active monitoring of transactions. That could be sort of retroactive, pattern issues, or pattern spotting, or looking for anomalies in various transactions. But doing some level of customer due diligence. I know it's incredibly hard in the DeFi space, but doing some level of diligence so that you're not unknowingly, or worse, knowingly, funding these laundering, assisting your users in laundering money. So I think that's probably the way I approach it from my perspective. Again, even if it doesn't apply, we should be taking some measure of compliance in this space, just to know how people are using our product.
No, all well said. And I know a lot of people are going to bite back, especially in the self-custodial world.
Exactly.
Right. Yasamin, I'm going to come over to you on the AI world, specifically generative AI as it applies to NFTs and also NFT music now. Just give a quick overview of what you've seen from a legal standpoint and any things that you're tackling right now.
Sure. So there's a fair amount of NFTs that are being minted based off of AI-generated art or other creative works. And one issue that has come up a lot is, can I own copyrights in the work that I create using my generative AI? And the Copyright Office recently issued guidance on this issue, reaffirming that the author of a copyrighted work needs to be a human, not an AI model or other machine. And so works that are created through AI generated tools are not entitled to copyright protection to the extent that it is the AI model that is determining the creative output of that tool. So one distinction that the Copyright Office made is, for example, if I'm using an AI model, I can put in a prompt or instructions through an iterative process about, I wanted an image of a monkey riding a horse. And while I'm influencing the output by the prompts or instructions I give the model, it is the model that is determining how that is expressed. And so that would not be entitled to copyright protection. Now, that doesn't mean that there's never copyright protection in works that are in some way created using AI. And a couple examples where you can have copyright protection is if you're taking AI-generated works, but you're expressing creativity and your selection and arrangement of those works, then you can have protection in your selection and arrangement. And another example is if you are taking an AI-generated work, but you're making material changes to it and expressing creativity in those those changes, you can have protection in that. So that was, I think, useful guidance to some extent. In terms of the protection in those works. And the other thing that the Copyright Office said, which is very important, is it is instructing people that this needs to be disclosed in their copyright applications when the work is created, in part using AI, and that is true for your future applications, for your pending applications, and if you have registrations, you need to go back and fix that, and they caution that if you don't fix that, that can result in loss of your copyright registrations. So it's very important that if you want to be able to enforce your works, that you pay attention to these things and you follow the instructions and you comply.
Yeah, I think we're all starting to see AI come up in all of our scenarios, right? Whether it's just digital assets or NFTs or otherwise. Katrina, have you seen this from your VC book standpoint, much more from an AI space, especially in the digital asset universe?
That's a great question. I haven't seen a ton of AI stuff yet. Metaverse is definitely more of a thing, and I think the crossover between metaverse, gaming, and NFTs is definitely a thing that's happening now, and I think it's referred to as multi-layer. Maybe I might be saying the wrong word, but basically you play a game, you get an NFT, you can then sell your NFT, you can trade it. The more NFTs you have, the more levels you can get to, and the more cool things you can do in the game. So there's this interesting crossover there. I haven't seen a ton of the AI yet, but I think there's it's an ancillary type of trend that we're seeing kind of in that world.
Sure. Julie, let's talk about Reddit. So you guys are doing a great job of building this bridge from Web 2 to Web 3 or Web 3 to Web 2. I personally want a crypto snoo. I don't have one. I need to do this. Can you talk a bit about what you guys went through for the airdrops that you guys have performed and some of how you guys are thinking about in bringing Web 3 into the normal Reddit universe?
It's a great question. I think especially so last year we had both this creator program shop where we had inbound creators that we were going to allow to be sold and fiat currency on the storefront. The idea there was, we wanted real Redditors and creators to make money, but that doesn't really solve the how do you get people into this space, the adoption problem. And so there we were like, well, what if we just give them away for free? People like free stuff, and so the team got to work on what would appeal to the vast majority of Redditors and different factions, coming up with all these generative art pieces. And on the legal side, we went through some of the same analyses that people are talking about here. How do we ensure that there's a bundle of rights associated with this NFT that ensures that they're not securities under the Howey test? Is there an investment, on the purchase front, yes, but in the airdrop front, there's the free stock cases that always get us in trouble with the SEC, but generally speaking, there's no capital raising happening here. It's just Reddit paying money for the minting so that people can get a free avatar. And so, I think there it's what analogs can we take from the gaming space for what are we doing in terms of product positioning? If Roblox can sell virtual goods for fiat currency, why can't we do the same thing? It's just that the way in which we're storing the entry associated with those license rights is in a decentralized database instead of a centralized one. It's all about transparency, data minimization, interoperability. And so those were, I'd say some on the airdrop front, there's other challenges that were definitely not legal. And I have some friends in the audience here who had to deal with a lot of those challenges, including how do we mint that many NFTs at once, depending on demand. And so there was lots of partnership deals going on in terms of well, we're concerned about our gas fees going wild. How do we minimize our gas fees for this sort of exercise? Do we do bulk minting? What are some of the options of diversifying these assets for individuals so that they're really intrigued and compelled? Because the idea was not just about our avatar in general is about how do you represent yourself online? What is my identity online? I go out in public and I'm wearing my my purse with my pins, and I have all these things that I like to have as expressions of who I am. But I'm also online, and Reddit's an anonymous platform where I can give as much of myself as I want. And so I want to show myself off with like pink hair or, some crazy idea or some hands around my face. And like, that's what I want to do in terms of expression. So on the airdrop front, it was, securities law analysis. How do we ensure that, there's no money transmission I had to worry about there? Thank gosh, that was like a nice, it's always nice when there's a legal win. You're like, I don't have to worry about this issue. And then our wallet is, it allows the users to self-custody their assets. So there was another aspect of this where, they would have to get a blockchain account, and we have an embedded digital wallet for which they can self-custody their avatars there. But what does that mean for users that are typically used to like Web 2 interactions? And so we have this like vault password, for example, which is unique, just like any other password, but it's theirs and we don't have access to it. So like people are used to, I forgot my password and moving on. Like that's something that like, sorry, that's not how it works. So those are some things that like we were going through in the process.
Yasamin, just want to call on you on any of what you just heard, whether it's the airdrop space or somebody starting from scratch to get from what was a Web 2 platform to now diving into Web 3. Any thoughts you have on what Julie just noted?
Yeah, so one thing that she mentioned that we deal with a lot is, with respect to the bundle of rights, is making sure that it's clearly communicated to consumers when they're purchasing an NFT what rights they're actually getting. Because that's been a huge problem in the space. And in most cases, the default is when you're purchasing an NFT, you're purchasing the token, but you're only getting certain limited rights to the digital asset that is associated with that token, meaning you don't own the copyrights or trademarks, that are the IP that's in the digital asset. And there's been litigation over this already, and it's really important to make those communications clear to consumers, both in marketing but also in the licenses. The license terms are really important. And one issue that's like a technical limitation right now is on the primary marketplace. It's pretty easy to have a license that somebody needs to review and accept and make it binding in terms of like an NFT owner agreement. But then when there's a secondary sale, either peer-to-peer or on the secondary market, that secondary purchaser needs to also be bound by the license. So there's technology being developed right now so that the license can pop up and require acceptance on the secondary market, but this is not like, as it is today, there's other ways that companies are having to deal with it, including putting conditions in the license saying, for example, that you can only sell this subject to the terms that are here. But it's up to the purchaser to read it and understand it and know what they're allowed to do so they don't get a IP infringement action against them. And the other issue is with resale royalties. So you can program a resale royalty into a smart contract, but in a lot of cases, the marketplaces are not necessarily implementing that resale royalty for various reasons. And so that's something that people in the community are working on addressing right now as well.
So I know we're getting to the point of wrapping up. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. What's the law look like in the next 5 years? And I know you could speak to it with respect to wallet, but feel free to dive into any of the other issues.
Like, that's a big question for the last 5 minutes. I feel like it's going to be constantly changing, right? Even with, as she was saying with regards to the Reddit wallets, like the issue of, okay, regenerating a key, that's something that you wouldn't normally see. It's going to majorly impact, legislation moving forward, because it's not the control, it's just, no, this is a tech thing to facilitate what we need to do. And I think as regulators move forward and they have, all the changes, it's going to be a matter of, okay, if I, consumer, can have a $5 bill in my back pocket, how does that actually work in the grand scheme of things with regards to laws within the digital space? So yeah, lots of change happening. I'm really excited. I think the fact that crypto is kind of like hitting this point of, oh my God, the regulators care about us, that's big, because it means we're doing something that they can't ignore, and it's really exciting.
And with that, I think we should end it. It's a good question, but this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. I feel like we've learned a lot about the nitty-gritty of actually doing
Thanks for the
things. So
time.
thank you very much.
Thank you.